is
Loc Talk! Loc Talk!
It is.
Welcome to episode 13 of the Loc Talk podcast with Karen and Brian.
Hi, Brian!
Karen, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm so excited today. We have such an amazing guest. Oh, he's such a good friend. I'm so thrilled to have him on the show today. Do you know who it is?
I think so. Is it Philip Wolff, perchance? Yay,
Oh
Philip!
my gosh, I'm so excited. So Philip Wolff, him and I, we actually only met each other through Instagram. And it's a kind of a funky story. It's kind of fun. I had a client in the NFL and he was going down to California and he says, I need a loctician to do a lock style. So I started searching and I don't even know if Philip knows this story, but we'll find out. And so he, or if he remembers the story of how we met, I messaged a few different people that had locks on Instagram in the Los Angeles area. And locticians. So kind of getting a feel of maybe a good recommendation. And I reached out to Philip. I was like, I messaged him and it was the private message. I was like, he's not going to get back to me. I don't even know. And sure enough, you know, he did. He replied and he said, I said, who does your locks? I have a client who needs a recommendation. And he suggested two people. And it worked out really well. My client saw one of the locticians and I reached out back. I said, thanks for the recommendation. And that's sort of the very beginning of how we met each other. So I'm going to bring him into the conversation because you know what? I'm just rambling and we need to talk to this guy. Like, I'm so excited. Philip Wolff, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Hey everybody, what's going on? Oh my gosh, listen, it's such an honor to be on this Loc Talk. It's so amazing. I know it's been something we've spoken about to do, and today's the day. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're in your office today, you were saying.
Yeah, today in the office, you know, I figured this would be a place where I won't get any interruptions or anything, you know. And funny enough, because of lockdown, I've spent a lot of time in here, so this is where it is.
But yeah, we were admiring your background. Like it's the map and the logo, and it's just framing you so perfectly. Not everybody can see it, but the listeners will have to jump onto YouTube and check it out because like the Philip Wolff logo behind you. What's it made of?
Oh gosh, thanks guys. You know, funny enough, this so I had this guy, you know, we were DMing and everything, a local artist, and he says, hey man, you know, I got something cool for you, you know. And believe it or not, I know that, and for the listeners, I know you can't see it, but for the ones on YouTube, you know, you can see how shiny this is, almost like it had been lacquered, which it has. This is actually made out of wood, and this is hand carved by him. And yeah, he makes these big signs and all sorts of things out of wood. He has a wood shop in his garage. I believe him and his father do this type of work. And I was blown away. I mean, this thing is a work of, I mean, such a beauty. And I told him, this is unbelievable. I'm putting this up for sure in my office, you know. I debated, should I put it in the shop or I don't know. I feel like it's perfect here. I love it. And yeah. And then of course the map, this was a gift from, you know, from Danny, and she,
Philip,
you know.
Is there anywhere on that map that you haven't been?
I know, right? Actually, there's quite a few places I haven't been yet, but you know what? That's the cool thing is it is on the list. Although there are some places that sometimes, not that I forget totally, but it's like it's not in the forefront of the mind. So it's good to be reminded of those things. You know, the last several years have been such a, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You always seem to be traveling. It's incredible.
Yeah, I was telling the story about how we met online and then we just kind of kept in touch a little bit over the months after I got that recommendation from you. And then what was the next thing? I kept showing up in LA and I was like, hey, want to grab a coffee? And you're like, I'm out of town. Hey, want to grab a coffee? I'm traveling to this place. Like, you're a busy dude.
Yeah, that was interesting because I do remember that. And but what's funny is I remember seeing your stuffs. I don't even know how, but every now and then, because I just, I started once I started my sort of, lock journey, as it were. I guess you start hashtagging a few things, and every now and then, I'll look up some stuff, or maybe it would just, I don't know, pop up on the explore page or whatever. But I see this mod locks, and I'm like, wow. First of all, let me just say, mod locks. What a name. Okay, first of all, that number one caught my attention, and number two, and I don't mean this in any way of, other than great, is I didn't know, is this a guy? Is this a girl? Like there was no like anything of that.
Anonymity.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, I don't know, but whoever it is does incredible work. So I was just like, this is amazing. So then when we started talking, and then you were like, hey, I'm coming to town. I thought, oh, this is the perfect opportunity when I am in town that we can do it. And I remember when we finally did, and that was fun. That was great.
Yeah. I didn't have any expectations because I totally get busy schedules, and when you said, "Yep, I can do this," and I think I literally flew into LA, picked up the rental car and drove and met up with you. And I expected maybe 15 minutes, quite truthfully. I was like, you got stuff to do because you had to fly to Mexico, I think, the next morning. And you were not feeling your best. And you spent time with me. And I was like, you know what? You're totally just, we are so on the same page, your energy, your vibe. And that's why, like Brian, same thing. Like we relate so much to each other just on our the energy we put out into the universe and our passion for what we do. And as Brian was saying, earlier, he said, I think Philip is like the most famous
Loc.
traditional hairstylist with locks.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got such a massive following. Like, congratulations, dude. An amazing achievement.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's definitely not something that I necessarily set out to do. It was just one of those things that it sort of organically started happening, and I started recognizing the fact that, wait a minute. And I don't even know if anyone knows this, but I was what you would sort of categorize as a late bloomer in the social media world. As a matter of fact, I feel like in life, aside from a few things, but definitely in social media. I knew it was around. I saw what people were doing, but I just thought, it's not for me, And I don't know. I just never thought that that would be something I would do on a regular basis, anyways. Until I started, meeting and working with more people who were into it, and and my clients as well. At that time when social media started booming, I was doing a lot of celebrity work and things like that. Of course, I'm based in Los Angeles, Beverly Hills in particular, and I just thought, well, I got my own thing going. I don't really. It's not something I was even able to share either. Anyways, I'd be in situations where I couldn't show anything in the moment. I'd have to wait months later to even reveal certain things anyway. So I thought, maybe it's not for me. But then again, I started working with more of these people, and they're like, yo, dude, you got to do it. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to post? They go, I don't know, whatever you want. So then we started collaborating. And I think that's the key, the collaboration, and honestly, doing things that simply we just liked doing. It wasn't even about, ooh, let me show off this or whatever. No, it was just simply, hey, you came from that era. So did I. You remember this? I remember that. Because I feel like at that time, anyways, and maybe you can, attest for this, during that time of when it was really starting to boom in the beginning, Instagram in particular, there was a lot of fresh, new, hairstylists in the game, and I think ultimately, if you're an educator of some sort, you realize those are the ones who are the most energetic and the most hungry right there. This is who keeps this industry truly alive, because without that energy, we wouldn't remember what that was like ourselves. And therefore, we feed off of that. And then it becomes this huge, amazing cycle. But so, yes, we just said, you know what? Let's bring back some fun stuff, not thinking many people would see it, just maybe a few who did understand would like it. That's it. Simply, that was it. And then I remember they allowed video to be more than 15 seconds. And I said,
Right.
okay, I don't know what, a minute, I think it was. And so I said, let me put this video together. And then boom, it just started. It was like 10,000 views, 20,000 views,
Right.
50,000 views, 100,000 views. And I was like, what the heck is going on, man? I had never, I think the most at that point, I might have gotten 5,000 views. And I was so happy at that point. I was like, oh my God, 5,000 views. That's crazy. But then it kicked over 170 or something in a day. And I was like, I didn't even know what happened. But then my follower count went up and more comments. So then we all looked at each other. We were like,
Hmm.
what the heck? Do you think we could do it again? And then we just, kept doing it. So,
And the
And
rest is history.
mhm. Yeah.
the algorithms change all the time. So, what your game plan was, what worked for you isn't necessarily what's going to work now when you start on social media. Um, but it helps that, as you say, that you have the passion and you're doing it because you like to do it and you just want to share, as opposed to trying to make it forcibly be popular, right?
This is very correct. Yes.
Yeah. Um, and so I think, your whole look, your image is definitely part of the package. I mean, you can't deny that, right? For people who are just listening, talk about, like, how long have you had your locks and your background? You're Filipino, right? Filipino
Actually,
mix?
no, I'm not Filipino at all, actually. But
Oh,
at least
I'm
my
so
name's
sorry.
Philip, so that's close. No, 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 and that's fine. That's fine. That's totally fine. As a matter of fact, I am of mixed race. Actually, I am a what you would call a mutt in today's world. So there's two main sides, and then I can break it down even more if you like. But so basically, it's a mix of a world of Caucasian and Asian. Okay, but within that, there's a multitude of things as well, and then maybe even a little asterisk, of a sort. So my dad is, he's American European
Yeah.
with a tad of course, Choctaw Native American. Okay, and so that would cover, the British, the French, the German, of course, because of my last name, and all of that. Funny enough, born in Jamaica. Anyhow, so then my mother was or is, yeah, I should say was. Let's not. But she is actually half Korean and half Chinese by blood, but born and raised in Seoul, Korea, and therefore doesn't really identify with the Chinese side, although the blood is there. So not only have I, and we can always get into this later, but dealt with growing up in a way of, okay, where do I belong? So did she, and dealing with certain discriminations of that world, because that, I feel like when you break down the subcultures of subcultures of subcultures, sometimes people don't realize there's a thing going on in there, and which she definitely dealt with as well growing up. So that's me, and yeah, so that's my, I would say, racial makeup.
Well, I have a very similar story too. I was born in Guyana, and German, Indian, Portuguese, French, Black. So yeah, true Heinz 57.
See,
And
look at that. I love it. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Actually, and I was born in Germany as well. So to top all of that off,
Well, you said
so that
Jamaica.
was
Your
amazing.
mother was born in Jamaica? No,
No, my dad was born in Jamaica.
your dad
Mhm.
was born in
And
Jamaica.
then funny enough, his mother, who was you know, part, she spoke like four languages. She spoke Spanish, Tagalog, because she was actually born in the Philippines. So that wraps it all into the Filipino thing. Even though she's white, but she was born there, so she spoke that and Spanish and French and English fluently, might I add, and quite the woman she was.
And do you
So
speak more than one language?
I'd love to say that I could be fluent in many languages. That would be amazing, but I have to say I do not. I growing up, I every 3 years, maybe four, was the mark of, okay, we're not going to a new city, we're going to a new country. That was just my life, right? So if I happen to learn a bit of German along the way, well, now I've got to learn, because then we went to Norway, okay, and that's a whole different, not only language, culture, you know climate, scenery, the whole thing. Of course, then you get tied into that a little bit. Then all of a sudden, wait a minute, we're going to, you know, Italy or, wherever it was we went. Uh, so the answer is no, the short question. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't.
Oh, this explains a lot though, because knowing now that you grew up traveling to different countries, um you were already you know um exposed to so many different worlds, so many different cultures and experiences, way more than the average American.
I would say so. I would say so. And funny enough, it's all I knew. It's all I knew. I honestly, to think about someone who I was born and raised and, my whole life, but I can't even wrap my head around that type of lifestyle. I'm not saying it in a good or bad way. Just that's just so different from and I think it taught me, what's funny is no matter where I went, I didn't I didn't necessarily belong from, I wasn't like, that's where I'm from. So it was kind of like I had to learn to adapt very quickly. I always was the outsider. So it was kind of like ingrained in I just was used to like, okay, we got to go, here we go. And that's it. Until we went to, of course, oh, how about this? Then we got our first taste of the United States. And this would be the grades between kindergarten and second grade, 3 years, funny enough, right? Then we moved back overseas to Amsterdam. We lived there for 4 years, and all of a sudden we go, you know what? We're going back to the US, and this is where we're going to be. So we go back to the US. This was the East Coast, mind you, Washington, D.C. area. And then I spent, sort of my tail end of middle school and high school and all of that. And then sort of grew up there. That's when I got into the hair industry. And then, of course, I found my way to the West Coast eventually, where I lived for many, many years. And I'm still here now.
Wow.
You feel like you belong?
What's that?
You feel like you belong on the West Coast now? Is that
Oh,
home?
yeah. You know what? It's funny because, of course, my whole life bouncing around everywhere. And I think okay, so from my father's side of the family, enormous part of the family, by the way, they're everywhere, all over the world. So one of my uncles worked in showbiz. So he was like a producer. Funny enough, he had Wolf Productions and all this. And he was also a photographer and animator. So he worked with, like spin-off shows of The Simpsons and things like that. He worked with Disney and he did a lot of things like that, a lot of magazine shoots and stuff. And so he was like, hey, and going to his house. So we'd visit, right? Because my dad, funny enough, was a kind of a California guy himself. He spent a lot of time in Northern California. And also there's a small town called Petaluma. Now, a lot of people don't know it, but back in that day, it was a farmland. I don't know what it's like now because I haven't been, but my grandmother, aka my dad's mom, at that time, she had a ranch there, and which there was a farm and all kinds of stuff. So we'd visit Petaluma. But anyhow, as a teenager, he's like, all right, we're gonna go have a family vacation on the West Coast. So I thought, oh, this is great. And I might have been, you know, 14, 15. And I thought to myself, oh, this is where I need to be. I mean, I just thought to myself, first of all, I'd never seen sunlight like that. Okay, first of all, growing up in Europe, okay, you're going to get the extreme four sort of seasons, and more so the cold. That cold is piercing. There was not a cold similar to that I can remember, although East Coast can be pretty piercing as well. But it was a different thing. So, I mean, winters in Oslo, Norway, something I'll never forget. So, I go and I'm like, I mean, just the people, just everything, you could just feel it. You could smell it, you could feel it. The culture, the people, everything was different. And everyone seemed less uptight about what was going on here. Okay. And at that time, as a teenager, you're trying to figure out who the heck are you and where do you belong, right? But it seemed like no matter what, whether I walked into an In and Out or if I went to a retail store, no one was going to treat me any other way than, what's up, man? I just thought, what is this? Listen, I'm going to tread lightly here. I'm not trying to say anything bad about the East Coast because I love the East Coast, believe me. But at that time, there were certain things, and especially being, I think, in the Washington, D.C. area, where it is known to be a little bit conservative at that time anyway, which I would say would be the late, mid to 90s to above. You know, you don't get treated so well if you happen to look out of the norm, okay? In many ways. So I think that that is what stuck in my head. And I thought to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to go out there. I don't know. I just had this thing. So many years later, I didn't know how, I didn't know what. But then eventually, I didn't even know I was going to do hair at that point either. So that was way out of. Then I got into hair. And then I just saw myself slowly but surely, okay, I think there's a big business in hair out there. I
Mhm.
think I'm going to finally do it. So I spent some time to plan to go. And then here I am, many, many years later, of course.
I find it very interesting because your background is eclectic and it's very it's diverse. And so you gravitated to an area that's very diverse,
Mm.
right? As you say, like everybody is different and everybody's accepted, and there's a lot more inclusivity within the diversity, if that makes sense.
100%. And might I add a little extra something to that? Of course, you know, anecdotal to me, but basically, I felt that the West Coast had, yes, almost every culture you can think of. East Coast has a bunch of other cultures, but I felt on the East Coast, where I was in particular, everyone just blended. They didn't care so much, really, right? I was in Washington, D.C., and there was everything. I mean, black, white, Indian, Asian, I mean, whatever, and then many subcultures within, you know what I mean? It wasn't just, Mexican, it was Venezuelan, Guatemalan, I mean, you name it. It was, Dominican, Puerto Rico, So, but then on the West Coast, particularly in LA, yes, there's everything, but you can definitely feel the segregation there. Um, for whatever reason. And I think a big part of it, and this is just being here for so much, is I feel like, Los Angeles being sort of the mecca of the industry, as it were, right? Uh this is where did stereotypes come from? Like why do you think certain things of certain races? That had to come from somewhere. Where does that come from? Well, it's from stuff that you watch on TV or in a movie, right? And where did that come from? Los Angeles. Now, the people who make those shows and movies, where are they at? In Los Angeles. That's how they see all this stuff. And so I think because it's like that, that's where it comes from. And that's just my theory. I mean, who knows? But I mean, that's just what I put together, Not to say people aren't cool with each other here, of course. At the end of the day, it depends on who your circle is, of course. But I just mean as a whole, you're gonna see, little Ethiopia right here. You're gonna see, Koreatown, which is pretty huge over here in the West Coast. Over there, you're gonna see, and everything's in its own little Armenia,
Yeah.
all these things, but
Mhm.
you don't necessarily see everybody blending in, hanging out like that. It's just kind of boom, boom, boom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the joys of Toronto. Toronto, we really do blend a lot more. I mean, you do have the pockets in the neighborhoods for here as well. But yeah, you see packs of people that are all different races. I think a lot more in Toronto.
And
Yeah.
and I would say, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you because funny enough too, here's another little tidbit of fun fact. So another part of my family is Canadian as well, because what happened was, okay, so from my father's side of the family, so he had, many brothers and sisters, and a lot of them broke off and just went to Canada, and then just had their kids, and they grew up Canadian, and that's just kind of how it went. So I remember when I would visit certain, I'd be like, wow, and Toronto was one of those places, and I thought, wow, this is cool, man. Like this is because in the beginning you're thinking, oh, Canada, do they like, is it different, But then when I went there, I thought, this, I mean, culturally, maybe, but I just meant everyone speaks the same. Like it just seemed it's not like that different. And I
I
was young, as a little kid, but I always thought everyone's open here. Everyone's so nice. I thought this is great. So I can see how that is how you would get that from that.
I think a lot of people who live in Toronto, we would describe ourselves as like a blend of New York and Los Angeles.
Mm.
Hmm.
You know, um,
Hmm.
we're a little bit more spread out than New York. but we have the New York weather.
Right, right.
So I
Yeah.
want to get back to the locks, Philip.
What's that now?
I want to get back to the locks.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure, let's
How
get
that
to it.
started.
Get to it. All right.
How did that start for you? Like, how is the journey? How did it begin?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to take you back a few years. All right. Maybe even more than a few. So, so I would say I've had a good set of locks twice in my life. Okay. And the first time I had it was during an era of my later teens. Okay. And that ended when I was 19. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Again, we're going to go back to I was on the East Coast. You finished high school by then, or I did. And I thought to myself, okay, I made the decision, you know what? College. You hear about it. You should probably go out of, social pressures and or what else are you going to do in life? Well, there's other options, but you need to figure that out. So I was on this sort of hunt to what am I going to do? I quickly realized college, not for me. I did it for a little while, but I thought, no, I don't think so. Or at least I did this one. And I think maybe people can relate. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to work a little bit and see where I see what comes of this. So anyhow, during that time, I was always a free, like I want to identity wise, I've always felt, expressive on the outside. It's just one of those things I've always been into, regardless, funny enough, of my peers. And I was actually until the later teens though, but early on in my teens, I could have a mix of friends that were like maybe some of them were jocks and some were preps and some were well in my day that was
That's the category.
yeah, no, that's the category. You had your metalheads, your
Gosh.
your rappers, all that stuff, right? Yeah, or and so of course we had hippies as well, the tie dye, the whole thing. So I had dreads for several years, and it's not easy to get a job when you looked like that. Uh, so one day I just said, you know what? And funny enough, this will lead me into hair. But anyhow, my mother was my hairstylist. Why? Because she was a hairstylist and a makeup artist, and had always told me, Philip, you're going to be great in this beauty business. And I was like, Mom, come on. What are you talking? I'm not a beautician. Okay, I respect the idea, but come on, Mom. I no. But I said I would call her up when I needed. Of course, I hadn't had a haircut in many years because I had dreads and my hair was really long. So I said, Mom, it's time. And she said, get over here right now. So she was excited. And I swear, a 13-gallon trash bag, I mean, full of hair. I mean, this thing, it was incredible. I honestly, I don't know how. And that, mind you, look, I have a dread hawk, as we would call it in today's, but back then it was just a full head. So you can only
I
imagine.
would love to see photos.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That.
that'd be
I mean,
awesome.
I know there's somewhere. I think she has them somewhere in her house because we didn't have, it wasn't digital back then. Um, so anyhow, I cut them off, and immediately I realized, you know what? In this world, unfortunately, I have to play this game. I have to play along. And I felt sad because I was like, I can't really be myself outwardly. So I have no choice, I guess. I'm young and I have to play the rules. Let's do it. And I just didn't feel that great, but whatever. I got a whatever haircut and I combed it and I said, okay. And then boom, got jobs just like that. Um, Funny enough, I started getting tattooed at that time, but of course, all where if I wore a long, you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
So that was my thing. And then I said, you know what? One day, and this, I never told anyone, by the way, as I'm getting the locks cut off, boom, boom, and I see them drop and hit that floor, poof, I can almost hear it, poof. And so I go, you know what? I'm going to grow these back one day. Oh, yeah. And not only am I going to grow them back, I'm gonna have them long. I'm just gonna let them go free and crazy, and I will have a job. I'll do whatever I want. This is what I was telling myself right now. I don't know. That might have been out of spite or something. I don't know. But
Manifestation, that's what that
well,
is.
that may be. And so then, of course, many years go by. And then, of course, during that journey, I get back in the hair industry and all that. Now, let's fast forward to when I started them again. So there was a period in my life where, you know, I said, you know what, I'm gonna give up my. So let me just give you a quick little. So I had built a very successful business on the East Coast doing hair. I worked my way up from a small little shop in a suburb to going to Washington D.C. to one of the biggest and most sort of ritzy areas at that time. It was called. It was kind of like the Chevy Chase DC area, sort of Friendship Heights. This is where you're going to have your Tiffany's, your high end sort of boutique areas, and this, that, and the other. And so um, I thought to myself, I got to do this. So I just boom, I was hustling it. You know what I mean? I mean, going to all the makeup counters and getting all the pretty ladies to come in. And so then I grew a name. Next thing you know, I do the editor of Washingtonian Magazine. Boom, I get written up. And let me tell you something, back then, there was no Facebook feed. It was the magazine issues that come out. And once a year, it was the top 20 of restaurants, salons, blah, blah, blah. And when that issue came out, I swear, the day it came out that morning, that phone was ringing off the hook because boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, I was doing quite well, but that really accelerated me. And anyhow, so I, was able to be good. So then I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to the West Coast and try to make it big. Well, that was a humbling experience. But anyhow, I will fast forward. So now I'm on the West Coast, right? And
No, that's the best part. We want to hear the humbling experience.
okay, yeah, because I don't know how much of this you want to get into. Okay, so we'll go to okay. So I get here and I'm thinking, all right, I'm fired up. I'm like, West Coast, I'm finally here. I made it. Well, I might have made it there physically, but I was far from making it. Let me just tell you that right now. And I believe that's also what can be, what's the word I'm looking for? It can be a little bit, anyhow, what people see on social media. We'll get into that later though, but meaning the newer culture out there. So I get here and I'm like, okay, I got a little money in the bank. All right. I had spent about a year going back and forth, planning, doing all this. So I planned to go out. And then the owner or part owner of the salon I was at there says, hey, you know what? I like your idea. Maybe let's team up and do this. So I thought, well, this is great. Anyhow, that doesn't work out. Okay. So now I'm on my own again, very quickly, within maybe 6 months or so, just due to some, things don't work out. Right. So then I'm like, okay, what do I do? Slowly but surely, my savings is starting to dwindle. Also, that fire, that light, that motivation that got me going, that the excitement of being on the West Coast, it started to dwindle down a little, right? And the spirit, just everything inside just started to get dim. And my way of life started getting small. I had to downsize. I actually had to get rid of my car. I mean, every little thing that happens along the way of humbling yourself, I had to do. Now, I have to say, the one amazing thing that was on my side at that time was that I had great credit. And I bring this up because let me tell you something. Credit can make you or break you in today's world, and especially then too, because I'll tell you what, I was paying my rent with my credit cards at that point. Now, had I not had good credit, that would not be happening because I probably wouldn't have a credit card with any room on it. And I thought, this is my life? Wait a minute. I gave up 6 figures on the East. I had grown it for years for this. But then I thought to myself too, I can't go back. I can't go back with my tail between my legs. I'm going to make it. I have to figure a way. I'm not, or this is where I'm not ready to go back, So there was a bit of all of that as well. I said, you know what? Times are tough, but I've been in worse positions because I really have. So I said, here we go. So that's when I started to hit the concrete. And I mean, I was ready to do anything and everything. I was working 7 days a week for probably the better part of 4 years straight in multiple shops in multiple areas of the city.
Mm.
Never said no to any gig, even if it didn't pay. Because let me say, out here, a lot of it is who you know as well. You don't know who you're going to meet or what's going to happen or what you're going to learn. Anyhow, all these sort of little fundamental rules and things that have been told to me over the years as a youngster, I brought with me and I pulled them out of my tool bag of life. And I said, I'm going to apply these because this is why people kept telling me this stuff. Of course, at the time, you're like, yeah, yeah. But they're like, listen, save this one. You are going to need this later. So, of course, it did. And it was like this. It was like there was this puzzle piece with missing pieces. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, this one, it goes there. And I started to light up again. I started to get excited again. I said, this is why I came out here. But let me say, I wouldn't have, enjoyed it had I not been brought down a little bit. Listen, I'll be honest. Towards the tail end of my, being on the East Coast, I was young, okay, mid 20s. Now get this, mid 20s, didn't go to college, didn't finish college, none of that. And here I am making fairly good money at that time. So I thought to myself, I'm doing all right. So I just had that for a few years and I didn't have to worry about much financially for a while until, it brought me back down. It said, no, 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 man, don't think that, listen, this can all be taken away like that. Don't even think any differently. Don't you ever forget where you came from, man.
Mhm.
And so I thought, you know what? You're right. And since then, I never have because you just can't. You can't forget those things, because there's no way you're going to truly enjoy,
And
those
appreciate.
or appreciate exactly those fruits of labor or whatever you want to call it until those hard times have come. So anyhow, that was that. Slowly but surely, I sort of built my way up. I was given a chance, at this high end salon. Which, by the way, here's another humbling moment. I had done a lot on the East Coast, to where if you were to build up a resume and send it in, it's quite impressive, especially for that age. Let me tell you something here on this West Coast / Los Angeles area. You know what they do with your resume? It, it's in a pile. They don't care. First of all, this is what they care about. Well, at that time, mind you, I mean, obviously times are different now. Let's forget about COVID and all this. And pre-social media. It was like, okay, where are you from? What did you make last year? Who are your clients? And what can you do for me? It's
Mhm.
not about what I can do for you. Look, you already know the name of this place. Right then and there already shows you need me. So for every one of you, I have 1,000 of you waiting in line. So why you? Why am I going to hire you? I don't need to hire you. And especially the fact that I wasn't even from there. So how can I tell them what I made last year? It wouldn't matter anyways because I didn't make it there in that town or this town. So I thought, oh, this is rough. So I had to figure a way in. How can I get in? Well, funny enough, as luck would have it, one of these companies that was real big in the celebrity world at the time was going global. And they happened to want to open up in Asia. Okay. And this is where I'm getting to this. One of them happened to be in Seoul, Korea at the brand new W Hotel at that time. And they needed someone who was at least a little bit Korean. And I do have a quarter Korean in me. That helped me with the visa, in which I went there and started doing, the Samsung family and the LG and all the celebrities, which to me didn't mean anything because I didn't know who they were. So why am I going to be nervous or anything? I can't even speak Korean, right? So I had a translator with me and they would tell me, oh gosh, this is like the equivalent of the Britney Spears, and they would tell me who's who. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And of course, I was just me, being funny and goofy because that's just how I am. And so they liked me because they're thinking, oh, he's not trying to like get something from me or whatever. He's American. He doesn't know. So, and then we had W Magazine and all these, so I was, we were doing it big there and it was fun. But of course, that only lasts for so long. And of course, I got to return home. I mean, you get homesick and all this. So eventually, after about a year, I come back and Privé says, you know what? Okay, you've done it. You've helped us. Pick one, LA or New York. I'll give you a chair 2 days a week. I said, I'll take it. Of course, they give me Sunday, Monday. And as you would know, that's not necessarily the prime days.
Sorry.
Fine, but I'm going to take it because
Yeah.
I worked my ass off in a foreign land. Okay. So here we are. Of course, I picked LA. I mean, that's ultimately where I wanted to be. So I get this chair for Sundays and Mondays, and it is slow. So I'm like, okay, how do I do this? I mean, I'm working at barbershop. I'm doing everything I can to like stay afloat and pay my credit cards back because at this point, my bills are racking up. Okay. And the months keep going by. I remember one time, and at that time, we get paid every 2 weeks. I got my paycheck, and I believe it was like a bill. I feel like I owed them. That's how low my paycheck was, right? And I thought to myself, I'm a grown man at this point. I'm at the point of tears almost because I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is pathetic. Like, there's got to be a different way. So as it would happen, I said, you know what? I got to hit the road. I got to hit the concrete again. I got to start hitting the clubs. With what money? I don't know. So let me be friends. Let me try to meet these promoters. Let me do something just to get in. Now, most people would want to get in so that they can get in and party. Oh, no. I would get in and get a sort of, and of course, you got to be friends with the bartender. Please, man, hook me up with some soda water and a straw. Throw a lemon in there for looks. There was no alcohol in there. Okay. I give them $3. They're happy. I'm happy. I'm walking around like I'm partying. Of course, this is nothing but seltzer water. Okay. And I would go up to the most attractive group in there. And here's the thing though. This is the funny part. The minute a group realizes that you're not trying to hit on them, the walls come down.
That's
and then
right.
they hear that you do hair. Oh my goodness. And then it just changes, right? They start talking about that. And I'm like, listen, I'll do it free. Come on in. Just tell your friends. Boy, did that work. And so, because listen, most of these people working at the clubs and all this sort of thing, or they want to be seen, right? Or they're models, or they want to be an actress. Everybody needs headshots. Everybody needs their hair and makeup to look good. Let's do it. And if someone's attractive and they're walking down the street with great hair, they're a billboard for you. Because as you would know, in this business, still to this day, funny enough, it's about word of mouth. And social media is just the digital form of word of mouth. So that's how, that's partly how I started building up and building up. And
Well, where did the locks come in? The second set.
So I'm getting to that. So then I'm like busting my, I'm working. And then nowhere in my plans was to have children because I thought this is not for me. I mean, they're cute and everything, but no, thank you. At least not now, So I think I was, I don't know, 33 at the time. And, boom, I realized, okay, I'm going to have a kid. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm not 19 like back in the day, we're grown adults here. Let's do this. So I had my first child. And I quickly, if any of you are parents out there, you realize nothing is the same anymore. What you used to think was important, all of this stuff, your life immediately changes. And I would have to say it's different for men than women because women realize once they're pregnant. Guys, we don't realize it until that baby comes out. I mean, I'm sorry, you see the bump, you're sympathetic and everything, but you don't know until you see that baby. So when that baby came out, I said, okay, life's different. Here we go. And then 22 months later, number 2 comes. And this is where the locks start happening. For a while, I felt, okay, my life now is just about work and the kids. That's it. And of course, anything had to be low maintenance for me. So I didn't want to have to worry about who's cutting my hair. And by the way, I had this, but everywhere. I had a full shaved head. And I thought, okay. And then I got so busy for several months. I did that for about 18 months, by the way, just, shaved head. I lost a bet. I think that's why it started that way. And then I know this is, so then because I let it go for, a little bit, it was just kind of a crazy, not right. My hair is not the type to just lay nice and, it just comes out for a while until it gets long and then it comes. So then I said, for fun, let me do the Chuck Liddell, and for all of you who don't know who that is, it was an MMA fighter who was called the Iceman, and he was known for this really short mohawk. So I just did it for fun. And funny enough, this is that same haircut just grown out. So I just always kept the mohawk, but I grew the hair. So funny enough, it grew so long. Okay, I started to do the pompadour or comb it to the side, and then pompadour. Then that got so long, I started doing the man bun. And then after the man bun, it got long. And then my hair is actually, it's so thick that even with this shade, if it was down, you couldn't tell. It's kind of very frizzy and puffy and wavy and weird, right? Except for the very front. So then my daughter comes, and it's funny because the day she comes home, because we were in the hospital for a few days, and I believe this was the day before or maybe just right on April 1st. And I thought, I looked at her, and you know how you just start to talk to a baby. They're not. Anyhow, so I'm talking, and I said, she kept grabbing my hair for whatever, or just being very close. And I thought, you know what? Speaking of which, I'm not going to have time for anything. So you know what? I don't even care anymore. I'm letting it go. And then all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, if I let it go, it could, maybe this is my time. Then it all started coming to me. Maybe it's time to do dreads again. Because at this point it was kind of longish, like, I don't know, there, and then the rest is me. So it was enough hair to do it. And then I started thinking about it. So then that's where it started. I said, that's it. And you know what I said? I told her 10 years. I'm going 10 years and I'm not going to cut it. I mean, aside of this, So that's where it started. And I am now 7.5 years in. And here it is.
And do you still subscribe to the 10-year deadline?
I do subscribe to the 10-year deadline. I mean, look, I've made it this far. Will I make it all the way? That's sort of the goal. But there's no guarantee I'll actually cut them at 10 years. Maybe I'll trim them up. But I feel like I've gone so long now, and anyone with a significant amount of locks that's long, you definitely grow an attachment to them. They start to now become sort of more than just, oh, it's an extension of you, or blah, blah, it literally is you. I mean, even in the fact of like, they don't picture, actually people who've known me for years, they go, bro, I don't even know you without those. I don't even know what I would do, and so to this day, I asked my daughter, I say, and she knows I started these because of her. And she says, oh, daddy, no way. No, you can't cut those. I said, okay, all right, I won't. And she goes, and I told her, I said, I did tell you at 10. She goes, well, we'll talk about it then. She goes, but you're not to touch those until 10. I said, okay. And we'll talk about it then. Okay, boom. So that's that. That's the story.
Don't you love when your kids draw pictures of you?
Oh my goodness. And I have many a ones where just immediately I know who that's supposed to be, not because of the face and all of that, but because the hair is so wild with these palm tree extensions. That's
We've had many guests on, well, not many, but a few so far, and it's super cool how everyone seems to have a common thread with the locks. It's like separates you from the pack, and it sort of creates a sort of an affinity, like in a way a tribe sort of vibe. And the reason a lot of people like the locks, it's artistic, it's a little anti-establishment, it's a little on the edge, and so it gives us a sense of community,
100%.
which is kind of cool. And we're all a little weird and a little crazy.
We're all a little weird.
No, absolutely. And that's why we're here together on Loc Talk. And let me just say, it's funny because that's when we start, I believe you guys were telling me about how, of course, noggin oil and all this sort of thing. And I just thought this is brilliant, because I mean, actually, at one point, I even thought, look, maybe I should do some things about, with product with dreads and this and that. And then, but things get carried away. And of course, I probably will at some point. But, um, you know, you start to realize you're using different products now. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I'm at a point now where, oh, let me add this one thing before I go too far. If you were to say, hey, Philip, what is one thing that you would consider a good attribute or whatever. So I would say patience. It's always been something that I've had. I don't know why, but I'm fairly good at it. So if you're gonna have locks, you gotta have to have patience because now don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. You can get dread extensions and all of that, and that's fine. Okay, it's fine, whatever you want to do. For myself, I believe in just taking the long way to get eventually what you would be proud of most because you've earned it. I'll give you an example. Well, the locks, number one. Number two, obviously, a lot of people know me, obviously, because they know I have a lot of tattoos. And it's painful. It's not the best. I don't like pain. See, people do the misconception, oh, you must love pain. Oh, no, I don't.
Oh
What
no.
what what comes of that though, after the pain and the healing comes something amazing for me.
Mhm.
And so I believe you're not going to get that without going through that. You can't just, well, we haven't gotten to that point yet where I can just go, yeah, let me get a sleeve today. And then you wake up and then it's done. That's not how it works. This
Mhm.
takes a long time.
Mhm.
So it's a process. And so are these,
Yeah,
as
you
you
gotta
all
commit.
know. And of course, they evolve over time as well. So that's another thing. I'm in that process right now, as a matter of fact, because, and look, I love what you all do, being locticians and all that. I get asked many times, oh, how much to get, dreadlocks done? And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. I don't do them. I don't do them. I'm a fan of them. I am. And if you want to get them, I see modlocks. But for me, no, I don't do that as a service. And then they're shocked, like, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, no, no. Also because I mean, I do my own. And also there's a thing where in the beginning, you're trying to keep, you want them to look, you're trying to keep it all manicured and such. And then you get to a point where you're like, just let them do what they're going to do. And I think in the last several years, that's kind of where it happened to me because a lot of the times people will see a lot of loose hair. And I don't mean the front here, but like maybe back here, and they'll go, oh, that's a mess. You need to clean that up. Well, for me, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just going to let it go even further and see what happens there. And so what happens for me there is then they'll form tinier little dreads. And then those tiny dreads eventually map to the big dreads. And now you've got these Congos of little dreads hanging off the big dread. And that's where I'm at now. So, and I like that because you know what? That tells a story when you go down that, much like a root of a tree or you know,
Love that.
so I'm into that. I'm into the, you know, organic. I don't know. So there's sort of a hybrid of manicured yet free form in a way. So it's not 100% free form because I feel like if I did that, I would end up with something I wouldn't even be able to control. But then I don't want them exactly perfect either. So I just sort of in the middle, you
Yep.
know?
Cool, cool.
I'm so on the same page as you. I can't even. And as a professional loctician, I struggle with that with some of my clients because they come in expecting to have perfect manicured locks because that's their expectation of it. And they come and sit in my chair and I'm like, they look great.
Yeah, no
But,
way.
you know, of course I go to do the maintenance because I always tell people this, you cannot get the before look without the after look. Right? It's a cycle. So they come in for maintenance and they might come back 6 months later, 8 months later. But that whole process of when it starts to kind of soften and the roots get a little bit messy, there's that period of time where they really like the look of them. And you can't get that perfect, nice manicured locks at the bottom and that kind of disheveled look on top without having the maintenance. And
Yeah.
so that's exactly what you're saying. You just work at it a little bit, but you also are letting it organically grow.
Right.
We're so on
And
the
I
same.
think you and I share this thing too, where for whatever reason, the front of my hair has always been straight, the rest of it not. And people think, oh, well, maybe I sectioned this out and then maybe I, did the, no, honestly, it just happened. This hair is just hair that eventually, I don't know if it fell out and grew back or what, it never stayed in the dreads. So
Wow.
it just happened. And you know what? I thought to myself, well, I'm just going to leave it because why not? And it's fine if I pull it back just in a ponytail and these are behind. Sometimes people just think I have a undercut with the, like the Peaky Blinders or whatever, until I turn to the side, of course, and then they're like, "Whoa!" Well, this is my favorite one. Whoa, where'd you buy those?
Oh,
Are you
dear.
ready for that? Where did you buy those? Oh,
Yeah, I didn't. That's a new one for me.
yeah, that's quite the assumption, buddy. No, but I get that sometimes, or are the extensions, that whole thing, but.
Oh, of
Yeah,
course.
well, we're all different. I like mine to be sort of a little neater, and so I'm always working on them and changing up the colors. And yeah, everyone's different, got their own vibe. But I love the looseness of both yours, Philip and Karen's.
Well, and we can have the looseness because our texture is straighter, right? Like if you had loose hair in the front, it would just fro, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
that
Well, I love the tips on yours. That just is so
Oh,
cool.
thank you. Yeah. Well, I've learned from the best.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of my maintenance myself too. And Philip, I like our first year of noggin oil. So we're in like year 2 now, 2 and a
Okay.
bit. That first year, one of the highlights was having you do a post in your feed, and you mentioned the noggin oil, and there's a photo of you flipping your locks back. Do you remember that, Karen?
oh, I really remember that. Very
Ah.
yeah.
That was the highlight of our year, I tell you.
Oh man, that's awesome.
It was so nice of you to support us. We were just so freaked out, and
And
yeah,
then the
Well, it's my
collaboration that we
pleasure too.
did, the collab that we did it was a year ago that we did that collab with Alfredo.
See how time flies? It's unbelievable.
yeah.
And what a day that was. Though that couple was so fun to hang out with.
Yeah, it was really
That was
trippy.
fun.
They're divine timing is really what it's all about, because for all of that to just work, to have the people that fly into Los Angeles and to me be available, you be available, Alfredo, and 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 have the vision work together succinctly. It was just magic. It was so fun.
Yeah, honestly, you couldn't reproduce that if you tried, is what I mean, on all aspects. Because under normal circumstances, there would be one thing that didn't, you know what I mean? So I think that was brilliant. That was
Yeah.
so fun. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to stop the conversation. I'm sure everybody listening is probably like, this has been gold, especially
Oh,
for Philip Wolff fans. They're going to be like, no, I didn't know. And I'm really glad that you dug a little deeper and talked about the low points, because I know there are people going, oh, keep working, keep plugging, keep having that passion, because yeah, the flame can diminish a little. It can definitely come down. And we've all had shortcomings, and then we grow from that and appreciate where we are now from where we were. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. My pleasure. And thank you for having me on. And, I'm so sort of happy and proud of you all for just even having this, because I feel like, sure, there's a lot of podcasts, and sure, there are a lot of sort of this YouTube sort of thing going on of channels that talk about, hair textures and locks and all of that, but not necessarily one that's like this. So I think, and especially coming from professionals' point of view, I think that's very interesting, not just for myself but just anyone who just maybe wants to find out more about it, or who are in it already, or who are thinking about getting into it. All of that, I think the proper education is needed, and you guys are filling that, and that I can't wait to see it grow over time. I mean, this is it's amazing, and to be a part of it is, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing, Philip.
Yeah,
Thank you so
well,
much.
we will see you on the internet, and everybody knows how to find Philip Wolff. You can just throw out your social platforms real fast, and then
Yeah, yeah. Well, I Philip Wolff Hair at Philip Wolff Hair, and that's Philip with one L, Wolf with two F's. Hopefully, you know how to spell hair. And funny enough, I will be doing a little bit of YouTube myself soon. So if you're bored, check that out.
Okay. All right. Thanks again,
Okay.
Philip. Have
Yes,
a wonderful
Philip.
day. All
have
right.
a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Loc Talk! Loc Talk! Excellent.
Did.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Loc Talk with Karen and Brian.